here versus Georgia.
We did.
You never had any desire or wish you would have got a chance to play between the hedges?
No, I mean, obviously, would that have been cool? Of course. This is the tradition here, the rivalry, the passion. I have so much respect for Georgia, this university, what they've done, and I think it would be awesome to play here. I also, I think it's important that I start off by saying that I come from a biased viewpoint. So I think it's important to say I am biased in it. Being a boy that was raised in Jacksonville, my parents' first date was the Florida-Georgia game. After we would finish Pop Warner games at Lakeshore, my dad would take me and my brothers, and he'd be like, "Hey, I got $10 if someone's leaving in the fourth quarter, and I can get my boys in." I can't tell you how many times we did that. Most of the time they would be like, "Oh, take your boys, take our tickets, go." And we go to see games, and so I also think that just is such a part of my background personally. But then I think try to view from a non-biased standpoint, and you look at what are there maybe 3 games in the country that are like that. And obviously this is a unique, exciting place to play, but also you get to, offer the recruits. And I know it's such a big point for Kirby when he explained it. I totally got it. I said, man, I get your points. He wants one more weekend here every other year and I also admire that to a certain extent, because that just shows the focus that he has on recruiting. And if he thinks, I have one of these kids just a few more hours here, I'm going to get him. I love that about him. But I also think, a neutral site, split 50-50, I think it's pretty cool too. So I can totally see both sides. Now, which one, if I had to vote, would I vote for? But that's probably pretty easy.
Speaking of votes, you will have a Heisman Trophy vote.
Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts about where Hendon Hooker is at in the race, and is it over for Stetson Bennett, or could he still?
It's absolutely not over for Stetson Bennett. I think so much of the of what has people done for you lately create hype for them, and that's what gets talked about. I do not believe just in that. I will watch every player that is a contender. I watch every single play, literally every single play. I don't care if it's a Sanford game or whoever else. I don't just look at the stats. I will watch every play, and I think Stetson has had a very good season. I think he has. Do I think he's right there? Not necessarily, but can he get there? Yeah. I think there's some guys that have more moments right now, and I think he has the chance. I mean, if he plays great tomorrow afternoon, Kentucky SEC championship game, you can absolutely make a statement. And just because of what he's done too, you're always rooting for him, and kind of that fire and his toughness, and just someone that's easy to root for. But if I had to say right now, if I had to vote today, I'd probably lean my kind of 1A towards Hendon Hooker, and I think probably in second would probably be CJ. But I think there's so many guys, you start naming them. I think Blake Corum's in there. I think Bryce still has a shot. I think depending on what happens, I think Brock and Stetson could make some runs in it. And there's multiple other guys that have the ability to get in it. We're just over halfway through the season, and there's so much ball to be played. And so, also, Heisman voters, don't put in your vote till the end. So frustrating.
At the beginning of the season, did you think we'd be here where Tennessee was ranked number 1 in the first CFP ranking?
No. I did have them number 3 in the SEC, though, to start this season. I think what Coach Heupel is doing is, if you're a quarterback in high school, I'm not saying you have to go there by any means, but I'm saying if you don't at least look at Tennessee and look at Ole Miss with Lane and some of the stuff they're doing and their schemes, those two places, I feel like if you're a quarterback, the way they use their quarterbacks and put them in situations to succeed, I think you have to, you at least have to take a look to say what's behind all this, because those guys are doing an unbelievable job, and what Heupel has done with Hendon and the coaching and the maturation and putting him in positions to succeed, and then the encouragement, believing in him, I think he's done a fantastic job. And then rallying, getting a team to believe that they're not just can show up and play with these teams, but win and beat them. And that's a team. We're there for the Alabama game, and I was in the weight room the day before, getting lifted and seeing guys, and it wasn't. I don't want to say this disrespectfully, but there's a lot of teams that have lost to Alabama because Alabama walked in and they wore the A. I really believe that before it's ever kicked off. I never felt like that one time a couple weeks ago in Tennessee. It was a different feel. It was the confidence, and that's something that I think starts from a head coach and implementing that culture every day, and that's something he's done, and that's hard. It's really hard to do, and I just don't think, because you can't, quantify that, you can't put a number on that, we don't always talk about it, but it is so important. Those kids, and 17, 18, 19-year-olds, they were believing we're going to go in there and we're going to play with Bama and we think we can beat them. And it wasn't words to them. That's hard to do.
Where have you seen the biggest growth? You talk about Hooker being a Heisman favorite, towards the top of the ballot. Where have you seen the biggest growth from last year to this year? Or what's he doing differently?
I think accuracy on the deep ball, he's done really, really well. Early in the season, he missed a few, but man, how many times can you watch now and see him miss one of these? And it's not the easiest throw. You're talking about out and ups, and you're talking about inside of the numbers, kind of seam post that he's hitting on the money. His deep ball accuracy is very elite, and he's not missing a lot. He's really, you can see him staying inside the system. And I think the second thing is, it goes to that, but it's really hanging in the pocket and being able to make throws at the last minute, because they do so many stack switch routes. So sometimes it can take a little bit on that release, and he hangs in the pocket till the last moment and then is really good at throwing with pressure right in his face, which I think is also a key in this game. Georgia needs to get pressure right up in the middle into his face, and Alabama did a few times, and one of them pick, there's a guy right in his face and he can't follow through, and that led to the pick, and I think that's something that's going to be definitely an X factor in this game too. But those are a few of the things I've seen from Hendon just that are very elite.
You've faced a Kirby Smart defense before. What are some of the hallmarks? Obviously,
Couple of times.
Yeah, some of the things have changed, but what are some of the things that are pretty consistent that you see out of Kirby defenses?
Great defensive line push. Show some tapes tomorrow on our show. Last week against Florida, you would see 4 defensive linemen right at the snap shoot their hands, and you would see 4 offensive linemen for Florida get stood up. Like, they win the fight at the line of scrimmage. And then their linebackers play fast and downhill. I do think it's for Georgia, I hate it for him. I hate it for Nolan not being in. I think he's one of the best players in the country. So I do think they will really miss him, especially down the stretch. But that's something that's never changed. It's something they did so well, back in the day with the Marcel Dariuses and all those guys, and now they just keep regrouping.
Number 88?
Oh my gosh, yeah. 88, 78, 90. The defensive line is a joke, and they don't get the love I think they should deserve. It's just winning at the point of attack, and linebackers and their nickels and their safeties can run sideline to sideline and make tackles. And then I think it's the attention to detail. A few times when Florida had one-on-one on the outside, you could see the corners turn and run, and most corners are going to grab and maybe get past interferences, and they turn and get their eyes back just in time. And it's almost like, watching practices of Kirby, you can almost hear him saying, the little points he would say, and you could see, it's just they're so well coached, and then they have elite, athletes at the same time, and that just makes for a great defense.
A lot of talk about Tennessee's offense, and statistically, if you look at it, Georgia's pretty close behind them. Do you think what Todd Monken and company is doing is being overlooked, and if so, why?
Yes, I think probably because it's the way their schedule played out. If they would have played Oregon a couple weeks ago, then they would probably be having more hype. That was one of the best called games, most efficient games by a quarterback, and I still put as much stock into that because that's a game on your season, right? It wasn't last year, that was this year. And so a lot of people forget. I haven't forgot that game. I think he did a great job. I think then playing South Carolina, and we now know South Carolina's a lot better than people gave him credit for. They just thought, South Carolina's not really good. Well, South Carolina's playing, pretty well. Last week didn't go super good for them, but they're a competitive team. And what Georgia did, and just absolutely manhandling, and their scheme, I thought was really good. I think there's a few games they didn't execute right after that as well as they probably would have liked. They've said that many times, but I just think it'd be silly to underestimate their capability, his ability to have game plans, especially in big situations, and then Stetson's ability to be efficient, to be a playmaker. I think that gets overlooked too. Sometimes we will think, oh, this is, it's running, play action. This is an offense that when they want has a lot of different options. They're running jet sweeps. They're doing, playing sideline to sidelines. They're at times drop back. They're at times against Oregon, we're going quad formations, and that's something you never used to see out of Georgia. And they have it in their repertoire, and when they need to, they pull it out, and they just don't show it as much as other teams do.